I'm very excited to announce Michelle Montalbano, who's also one of our volunteers today. And she's going to be speaking on a topic that she's calling professionally underpaid, systemic issues in the LIS field. So prepare to have some really aggressive knowledge dropped on you, but maybe we can make some changes.
Hi, everyone. I too have a black blazer, but I decided to go with a Mr. Rogers at home look instead. I want this to be sort of a participatory presentation. I'd really like this to be a conversation because this feels like a crucial moment to be having this discussion about the climate of general discontent I think many of us are experiencing. I'm going to be talking about what it means to be a professional at all. I want to think critically about what cachet that kind of term has, and how unequal structures of race, gender, and class affect professional status. The fact that many of us feel we're not learning enough or not learning the right things to succeed in a competitive marketplace, especially with regard to the digital revolution, and that we are engaging in a professional education that ascribes to a model of work that includes intrinsic reward and unpaid labor. Those are the sort of main talking points. So, starting this conversation from the beginning, these are some pressing issues, as I've heard many colleagues and peers discuss. We're having an identity crisis. Are we librarians or are we information professionals? Even the other day at a student leaders meeting, the provost's office announced that they were considering removing librarian or the library from the school's title. So again, what kind of cachet do these terms have? What are the implications? And by the same token, what does it mean to be a professional versus a library worker? Two, again, digital. All things digital. A lot of alarmism going on, but that also means that we're being asked to have much broader skill sets, not only to be able to identify and classify the issues in a terrible data set, but then to write the Python script that you need to use to fix those problems, and yet we're still being paid the same. So more responsibility, more technical skills, same wages. And of course, the main thrust of this presentation, how the culture of volunteerism that is entrenched in this field results in deprofessionalization. So, sort of moving back a little bit, what constitutes a profession anyway? Sociologists have studied this. Basically, we're going to touch on some of this later, but mastery of a specialized theory, the body of work, we're all getting master's degrees, got that. And autonomy and control of one's work and how one's work is performed. So we're talking not only about operational autonomy, so how you do what you do on a daily basis, but strategic autonomy. So bigger picture stuff, the initiatives, the establishing best practices. And then again, the intrinsic rewards, the idea that we're working for a greater good. So here's a deprofessionalization flowchart I created. Now that we know what a professional is, this is how professional status is systematically diminished. Depressed wages, depressed workers, and increasingly high barriers to entry for young professionals. Deprofessionalization, and I want to take a minute to plug Library Juice Press shamelessly. I'm sure if you're into CritLib, you know all about them, but Roy Litwin wrote an excellent paper on deprofessionalization, and was a great starting point for my research. But a set of social trends going back to the 1960s has influenced this deprofessionalization phenomenon, women entering the workforce in droves, post-industrial society, computerization, which obviously democratizes access to information and makes it a less sort of specialized area of knowledge, and other things like possible social benefits from a class struggle perspective. So evening the playing field in effect, but that means that there's a net loss of autonomy for all librarians. Here, this is a fun little exercise. This is a real job posting. And I want us all to take a minute and try to figure out what I added for fun, what I embellished, and what is real here. Anyone? Anyone? Just the stuff in white. Everything else is from the Morgan Library, 40-hour-a-week commitment, unpaid internship, presupposing knowledge of a wide and deep range of subject areas, previous library or museum experience preferred for an unpaid internship. And now we all know, too, that entry-level positions are demanding 3 to 5 years of experience, and in some cases don't even count internships as professional experience. So it's not even a high bar to entry, it's seemingly insurmountable. Equally problematic is an academic system that runs on adjuncts, teaching assistants, and other low-paid, highly qualified individuals. So we're seeing deprofessionalization of our own profession, and we're seeing it happen to the people who are supposed to be educating us, and participating in an institutional structure that ascribes, on paper at least, to progressive hiring practices. So across the board, I'm going to get into some numbers here in the next few slides, but across the board, adjunct salary is pretty hard to track down. Some institutions are opaque about it, and assumed to be around $20,000, which is a huge gap between what the executive tier are making in an institution, which is clearly millions. So that here is a little preview, just a quick overview of those kinds of numbers. And the backdrop as well. This is, I believe, the most up-to-date stats from the ALA's Diversity Counts initiative. As you can see here, overwhelmingly female, overwhelmingly, and let's put aside for a second the problematic gender binary that is represented here as well. But you have a picture of the overwhelming majority of women, people of color, and marginalized populations that make up the LIS profession, and really well-documented wage disparity over time. And again, this doesn't necessarily reflect any sort of racial demographic in these numbers, so these numbers are probably much worse than we're seeing here. Note especially the egregious difference in the 1990s between men and women, 47,887 for men and 39,790 for women. The wage gap is closed within $100 most recently, but that's still not really enough and shouldn't be enough. And this is not new, right? This is a quote from Justin Windsor, the first president of the ALA. So this kind of gender discrimination has been entrenched in the profession from the outset. And surprise, it's still happening. This is still going on. This article was published in the New York Times 8 days ago, I believe. Women's work is still devalued. Once women start doing a job, it just doesn't look as important or like it requires as much skill. And I like as well that Paula England says that gender bias sneaks in to these decisions because it seems like it's fundamentally informed by gender bias. And this also continues to reinforce class lines, right? So the point that I really want to make here is that low wages are directly connected to these power structures. And if our profession is comprised overwhelmingly of women, people of color, and marginalized populations, this is continuing to reinforce that diminished status and the perpetuation of exclusive bourgeois class and power structures through a model of work that includes, again, that intrinsic reward. So the administration is perpetuating this not only in its curriculum and admissions policies, but also its hiring practices, which again are mirrored in society at large. And this do what you love thing, man. So we're being asked to do things for the greater good. It's a commitment to a higher cause, and that confers upon it a certain amount of prestige and importance within society, and for that, we are being asked to do a maximum labor, maximum value at a minimum cost. And this is something, again, we see reflected in creative sector industries and academia in all of these highly valued positions. So it reinforces widespread exploitation, especially within institutional structures, which are notoriously difficult to navigate, bureaucratic. And by the way, too, there's an article, this is from Jacobin from a few years back, and it's an excellent article about this do-what-you-love culture. But I want to say, this has all been really depressing, and I know that, but this is not a zero-sum game. A win, some policy reform that benefits students does not mean a loss for the institutional structures that we are trying to operate within. And Irina has been collecting data for Jeanette Bastian about schools that have required internships as part of their curriculum. This is, I think, 140 schools all over the world. And the problem here, right, is not about internships. Internships are not inherently problematic. It's unpaid internships. It's having more opportunities, like Irina mentioned in her presentation, where students are fully funded to do the kinds of research projects they need to do. And if internships are part of a curriculum, and there's no tuition remission, there's no payment for it, then you're paying to do unpaid labor and getting just experience in exchange for it. And most of the time students are doing lackey work or being treated like intelligent pieces of furniture and not actually getting as much out of it as they should be. So really, a solution to that is making sure that there's generous financial assistance in place. A great majority of on-campus students receive financial support. And of course, the enrollment is smaller than the enrollment we're seeing here, but again, I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment, like literally right now. So I did a brief survey of the enrollment numbers at some major LIS schools across the country. So Pittsburgh, 337 full-time, 205 part-time. Urbana-Champaign has 271 total, that was their info. Simmons has 821 total students. 593 on site, 71 off site, which includes SLIS West, 89 online, and 93 dual degrees. And actually, I was in touch with the registrar's office about getting some recent demographic information for this presentation, and they were really great and actually rushed to refresh the information so that we have up-to-date demographic stats for this presentation. So this is new, accurate. Take a look. I'm just gonna let those numbers. Yeah. Man, oh man.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly. I did need to point that out. Still using Alien. Yep. Still using Alien. So the problem really starts with the library schools. The over-recruiting to fill seats is a huge part of the problem. If there are so many students looking for positions, so many unpaid interns within the Boston area, that means there are going to be fewer entry-level positions available to recent graduates. It devalues the degree because they have students who are not qualified doing jobs that require advanced qualifications. And this too is mirrored in the academic community, written by, as you may see, a annoyed librarian, many of which we are. So, ways to counteract this: administrative and policy reform. We need to counteract this by refusing to participate in the perpetuation of exploitative labor practices, underpaid adjunct professors, and unpaid intern. So the solution is not employing adjuncts, it's paying them enough. And there was a presentation earlier where I think it was Elizabeth Lieutenant and Lindsay Inge were talking about how adjuncts are usually more amenable to curriculum reform and getting involved in initiatives for diversity. So they're great allies and they need to be treated as such, compensation-wise. So narrowing the gap between highest paid and lowest paid members. More admissions standards, more rigorous standards for admissions and graduation is important. So smaller class sizes are better for everyone, and making sure that there is not as much of a gap between the skills that we have when we leave and the skills we know we need to have to be competitive. and ensuring that the huge percentage of the student body have paid work study tuition remission positions as opposed to 5 GSAs and 6 fellowships, and that's it for a student body of 821. And shortening the program to 2 to 3 semesters would reduce the cost of living for so many students and make it more affordable, because again, only students with enough privilege to be able to pursue unpaid internship opportunities are able to get these positions, and again, systemic injustice cycles through again and again. Curriculum reform, and this is the part that's really a dialogic process. What kind of classes do we need to see so that we're more competitive? Should there be a project management requirement? I've heard this from a number of colleagues. This is a wish list item. More hands-on lab experience in classes like digital stewardship. We cannot be relying on Code Academy or Khan Academy to glean our technical skills. We need to apply these things to actual final projects and cement the skills. Technology on hand. School facilities need to have RIP stations. There's a lot of new skills that we're trying to glean or that we understand that we need to have that we just don't have the access to. And more projects that mirror actual work experiences include outreach to organizations within the community. This is huge because outreach is a fundamental part of our profession, and we'd be getting experience that affords those opportunities to people in the community and to us simultaneously. What can we do in the meantime, though? This is a lot of change that we're trying to enact. So right now, we can stop taking low-paid jobs and or demand pay commensurate with our experience and qualifications. I know this is challenging. I've been in this position, I'm in this position, who am I kidding? But we have to be vocal. We have to, Mayor said it perfectly, you have to get pissed off for self-advocacy to really root itself. But in this case, it's not just self-advocacy, it's advocating for your cohort, it's advocating for everyone to get paid enough to do the good work that we're doing. And let's put together a cohesive list of demands and present it to the administration. Let's say what we need from this program, because the changes that are being made to affect future students and not us. And we need to look out for ourselves as well as the future students. So let's get something on the desk of the administration. Our position in society is highly valued, and we are undervalued and underpaid, and it needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. Thank you. That's it. Woo!
Do we have any questions for the amazing Michelle Montalbano? Hang on 1 second.
Can I sit now?
I actually have a couple. One statement, one statement, one question. Anyone else notice on the register stats, there's nothing about ability, only race? So I wanted to point that out. And then I wanted to ask you a bit more about the volunteerism. I found it's very helpful to apply my skills that I learned in library school to other fields. And do you think if we're not able to find jobs in a profession, should we go to other professions? Because they can probably put our skills to use more than we can even get in our own field.
I think absolutely. I think that's a huge current in the changing face of the profession, is that our skills are so much more widely applicable than they ever have been. So of course, seek application for the things we're learning elsewhere, especially if you feel like you'd be more highly valued in another kind of institution.
Anybody else?
I can never be quiet, I'm sorry. Thank you, Michelle, that was awesome. This is kind of just like a comment on general, because this is a conversation that Michelle and I have pretty much
Every day.
Yeah, several times a day. And I'm in cultural heritage, that's the track I'm on here at SLIS, and basically we're sort of left at the curbside a lot. A lot of times we'll see the registration for courses and we're left off. We didn't even have a slot for our capstone experience over the summer, they left us off the registrar list. So it's been very difficult, and it's been very hard to fight for advocacy for us in cultural heritage. Basically, over the summer, we have barely any courses to take. So if anybody is interested, I'm trying to get a group of students together to sort of, I don't want to pay $3,000 to do another independent study where I do the work for myself. And if there's other people that are in this boat, I would like to get together, design a curriculum for a course over the summer, and try to get them to give us funding to get guest lecturers. Because we have to take this into our own hands, and we can't count on them to do it anymore. So come see me if you want to.
Yeah, I realized that a point that I wanted to make, I get so heated that I didn't make it, is that another thing I've heard many colleagues critique is that there's a wide chasm between theory and practice, basically, that we can address in some self-designed curriculum, that again, the field experience doesn't have to be, again, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it needs not to be utterly divorced from critical theory in a classroom setting, and it needs to have peer and mentor support. So we need to organize around making those changes happen.
And besides Mayor, how many other professors do we have here?
I don't know if it was open.
Yeah.
Oh, they weren't allowed?
No.
Oh, weird. I
Virtually.
didn't know that.
Virtually
Virtually?
they can, and those numbers are really low, or
They are.
actually no faculty.
Tweet if you're a faculty or a professional
Yes.
watching this right now.
Show yourself.
I know we've gotten 2 for sure.
We've got a couple questions.
At least
We have a staff member and
This question is kind of limited to Simmons here in Boston, but is there a current initiative here to get a list of demands on the desk of the administration or anything like that? If so, how can we get involved?
This was basically a call to action.
I can also add, Claudia, Michelle, and I have a meeting scheduled with the dean, so you can talk to us about, we're putting a list together.
Good question. So I'm also always sorry.
Don't apologize.
I was just wondering because, I think having smaller class sizes, a lot of the things that you mentioned sound great. I can say on Simmons West we have smaller class sizes, which is awesome, but it also means that classes get dropped if we don't have enough people sign up. And we had the dean come recently and we raised some of our concerns because we pay the same as Simmons Boston students do. But we have, there's no DERAIL. We could do this there. There's 71 students, but we have access to a lot less technology, so there's a lot of issues, and yet we're paying the same amount for tuition. So I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying, but when we raise these issues, we're told we'll then get more students to sign up. Otherwise, tuition is just going to keep going up and up. So I'm wondering what other funding sources you have as ideas other than raising tuition and thereby making an even more privileged school.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, because I think just linking students to other sources of funding, like available grants and fellowships, aren't quite enough. I think that, yeah, that's a conversation that I would like to incorporate and fold into this, is how do we find more sources of funding, because the money is out there, it's just not allocated to the right things. And there are, I think I was looking at Pratt's internship program, which they were opaque about a lot, but it seems like most of their internships are funded by rich people. Like, there are a lot of named fellowships that allow people to do good research. So finding sources of funding that way, I mean, yeah, that's a great question, and I need to look into that more.
We're going to take one more question.
So this is more a comment, sort of taking it back just like one question about faculty. So this morning, when Sam posted about coming to our forum and talking about adjunct faculty being our allies, Michael Leach, who's a librarian at Harvard and who teaches the collection development class here, posted on Facebook that I, for one, look forward to what you and the other participants create and share from this program. I know I still have a lot to learn when it comes to making my courses more diverse, equitable, accessible, etc. So I think this is just an example of an adjunct faculty paying attention to what we're doing, being involved in what we're doing, and really needing to sort of use that support for what we're doing. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Damn.
Thank you.